I got a female, mid-30s, early 40s, completely nin.
Statistically, when something like this happens, 90 or 95% it's the spouse. So I can understand why people feel like this. I'm in the 5 or 10%.
Jennifer Farber and her estranged husband, Fotis Dulos, were in the middle of a messy divorce and a heated custody battle when she suddenly disappeared without a trace. But the evidence at her home told a terrifying story. Investigators found signs of a violent struggle, blood spatter on the floor, walls, and garage door. Blood was also found on the exterior of Jennifer's Range Rover and in the kitchen. DNA tests confirmed that most of it belonged to Jennifer, but the blood on the kitchen faucet? That was a mix of Jennifer's and Fotis's DNA. Authorities believe Fotis was driving Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban after the crime, possibly with her body inside. That same evening, he and his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, were caught on surveillance footage tossing garbage bags into 30 different bins across town. Inside those bags were stained clothing, cleaning supplies, and forensic evidence tying them to the crime. But one of the most chilling discoveries were a shirt, bra, and zip ties with blood-like stains that tested positive for Jennifer's DNA. Investigators believe Fotis planned this attack, arriving at Jennifer's home by bicycle and lying in wait for her. Tire tracks and other evidence supported this theory. He then ambushed her in the garage, killed her, and attempted to cover up the crime. And what's even scarier, cases like this aren't as rare as you'd think. But let's start at the beginning. Fotis Dulos, a wealthy real estate developer from Farmington, Connecticut, married his wife Jennifer Farber in 2004. The two went on to have 5 children, including 2 sets of twins. But by 2012, there were signs of trouble. Jennifer wrote in her blog, "I wish I were a strong person, and that confrontation did not both scare and appall me." In 2017, Jennifer had had enough of the marriage and wanted out. She filed for divorce, citing Fotis's increasingly independent lifestyle and alleging he was having an affair with his colleague, Michelle Troconis. She also claimed Fotis had threatened to harm her, kidnap their children, and bought a gun, saying, "I'm afraid of my husband. I know that filing for divorce and filing this motion will enrage him. I know he will retaliate by trying to harm me in some way. He has the attitude that he must always win at all costs." That same year, Jennifer left their family home with the kids and moved to New Canaan. On the morning of May 24, 2019, Jennifer Dulos left her New Canaan home at 7:58 a.m. to drop her kids off at school. Just 7 minutes later, her 2017 Chevrolet Suburban was caught on a neighbor's surveillance camera returning to the house. The vehicle was seen leaving again at 10:25 a.m., but it's unclear if Jennifer was behind the wheel. She hasn't been seen since. That day, Jennifer missed 2 doctor's appointments in New York City, scheduled for 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. By 7 p.m., concerned friends, including her nanny, Lauren Almeida, reported her missing. Lauren arrived at the house at 11:30 a.m. and was surprised to find Jennifer's Range Rover parked in the garage, since Jennifer had planned to use it for her appointments. Detectives later searched the home and found blood-like markings in the garage and on Jennifer's Range Rover, alongside evidence of a cleanup attempt. DNA evidence confirmed the blood in Jennifer's home belonged to her. Surveillance footage also showed Fotis driving Jennifer's car the morning she vanished. Authorities believe Fotis was using her vehicle to transport Jennifer's body and items related to a possible cleanup. The car was later discovered 3 miles away near Waveney Park, left in reverse with its lights on and red stains on the passenger side. Later that evening, at around 7:30 p.m., Fotis and his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, were caught on camera in Hartford disposing of 30 garbage bags in various dumpsters. Inside those bags were Jennifer's clothes and plastic zip ties that tested positive for her DNA. Fotis' DNA was also found on the inside of a glove and one of the trash bags. The evidence painted a grim picture of Jennifer's fate. Investigators believe Jennifer suffered a serious physical assault in her garage before being moved to another location. Despite extensive searches around Farmington, Fairfield County, and Fotis's home using helicopters, K-9 units, and divers, Jennifer has never been found. On June 1st, 2019, Fotis and Michelle were arrested at a hotel in Avon, Connecticut, and charged with tampering with evidence and hindering prosecution.
You know where Jennifer is? Is there anything you would like to say to your children?
Where is she? Where is she?
They both pleaded not guilty to the charges, claiming that they had no idea where Jennifer was.
I have no idea what happened to Jennifer. I have no idea where Jennifer is.
After being released on bail, Fotis made a rare public statement, maintaining his innocence and saying that he hoped the truth would be unveiled.
I know what I've done and I know what I haven't done. So I have to stand and fight and hope that the truth is going to come out.
After months of investigation and collecting evidence, Fotis and Michelle were arrested again in September 2019 on another charge of tampering with evidence, then pleaded not guilty to the charge and were released on bail.
Mr. Dulos, in this particular instance here with this particular charge, what do you have to say for yourself?
It's an exhausting fight. I love my children. That's about it.
Where's your wife? Where's Jennifer?
We wish we knew, and it was very, I don't know if you got a chance to see us talking to the state police. I have a very friendly relationship with them. I wish them well.
Then, in January 2020, Fotis was arrested for a third time, this time charged with capital murder, and kidnapping. The arrest warrant claimed Fotis ambushed Jennifer at her home, assaulted her in the garage, and bound her with zip ties. Authorities believe Jennifer was killed between 8:05 a.m. and 10:25 a.m., shortly after dropping off her kids at school. Michelle Troconis was also arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit murder when police discovered she lied about Fotis's whereabouts the morning Jennifer disappeared. The case took a shocking twist with the arrest of Fotis's lawyer and friend, Kent Mahoney, who was also charged with conspiracy to commit murder. According to the arrest warrant, Kent gave conflicting statements about his contact with Fotis. His name had appeared in both Fotis and Michelle's alibis for the morning Jennifer vanished. Initially, Kent claimed no meeting with Fotis was scheduled that morning, but later, he changed his story, saying he had arrived at Fotis's home around 8 a.m. and waited for nearly an hour without seeing him. Phone records, however, showed Kent called Fotis the night of May 24, the same time Fotis was allegedly dumping bloody evidence in Hartford, though Kent denied it. Interestingly enough, Kent was also in the middle of a messy divorce and had been arrested after his estranged wife accused him of SA and violating a protective order. She even told police she feared Kent and Fotis were plotting to kill her after she started receiving some creepy phone calls from Fotis, who she barely even knew. But it gets even darker. Hunters on Kent's property found what looked like a hidden grave containing lime and a tarp. But by the time police arrived, the hole was empty. All three pleaded not guilty and were released on bond. However, Fotis failed to appear at an emergency bond hearing on January 28th, leading police to check his home. But when officers got there, they found him slumped over in his car, unresponsive from carbon monoxide poisoning. Fotis was rushed to the hospital, where he was pronounced dead 2 days later. Fotis's death was ruled side, and authorities found a handwritten note where he maintained his innocence and that of everyone charged in the case. I refuse to spend even an hour more in jail for something I had nothing to do with. I want it to be known that Michelle Troconis had nothing to do with Jennifer's disappearance, and neither did Kent Mahoney. In her only public statement, Michelle expressed sadness for the 5 Dulos children, who lost both parents within a year. She admitted she made a mistake trusting Fotis, but insisted she knew nothing about Jennifer's disappearance. However, in January 2024, she was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with evidence and was sentenced to over 14 years in prison. Before her sentence, she gave an emotional statement expressing her regret in ever getting involved with Fotis.
I deeply regret ever being in a relationship with Fotis Dulos and bringing my daughter, my family, and myself into our lives.
Meanwhile, Kent Mahoney is still out on bail, with his trial yet to be scheduled as of January 2025. But now, let's move on to another equally shocking case. This man did not just get rid of his wife, but his children as well. From the outside, the Colemans looked like the picture-perfect all-American family. Chris, a former U.S. Marine with a strong religious background, worked as a personal bodyguard for televangelist Joyce Meyer, earning a 6-figure salary and traveling across the country. Meanwhile, his wife Sherry was a devoted homemaker, spending her days caring for their 2 young sons, 11-year-old Garrett and 9-year-old Gavin. They lived in a beautiful 2-story home in Columbia, Illinois, and to everyone who knew them, they seemed happy. But behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. The marriage was strained, arguments about money were constant, and Chris was allegedly having an affair with Tara Lintz, a cocktail waitress and a longtime friend of Sherry's from high school. While he kept up appearances at home, Chris was secretly planning a future with Tara, showering her with gifts, texting her nonstop, and even giving her a promise ring. But there was one major problem. Divorce wasn't an option for Chris. Joyce Meyer had made it clear that employees who got divorced could face demotion or even lose their jobs. Then, in November 2008, something strange happened. Chris and Joyce Meyer's ministry began receiving a series of anonymous, threatening emails and letters filled with hatred toward Joyce. But instead of targeting Joyce directly, the messages focused on Chris and his family. One chilling message read, "Tell Joyce to stop preaching the bullshit. or Chris's family will die. As the threats kept coming, police increased patrols around the Coleman home, but by 2009, letters were even showing up on their doorstep. On the surface, it seemed like someone was trying to get to Joyce Meyer by targeting Chris, but oddly enough, no one else connected to Joyce was receiving threats, only Chris. Meanwhile, Tara was getting impatient. She had given Chris an ultimatum. He needed to leave Sherry by May 4th so they could start their life together. When the day came, Tara called him, and he assured her that the divorce papers were ready. He promised to give them to Sherry the very next day, but that day never came. On the morning of May 5th, 2009, at 6:43 a.m., Chris was driving home from the gym when he called his neighbor, Detective Sergeant Justin Barlow, the same officer who had been keeping an eye on their house due to the threats. Chris told Barlow he was worried because he couldn't reach Sherry or the boys and asked if he could check on them. Barlow, along with an officer from the Summit Police Department, arrived at the Coleman home to check things out. Right away, they noticed something suspicious. A basement window at the back of the house was open, and the screen had been removed. Sensing something was off, they immediately called for backup before climbing inside. As soon as they entered, they were hit with the strong smell of spray paint. Covering the walls were eerie red messages, including, "You have paid, punished," and "I am watching." Then came the horrific discovery. 31-year-old Sherry, 11-year-old Garrett, and 9-year-old Gavin were found dead in their beds, ligature marks around their necks. Meanwhile, Chris finally pulled into the driveway at 6:56 a.m. Police held him back from the scene, and when they broke the news that his entire family was dead, something felt off. His tears seemed forced. He didn't ask how they were killed, and even more suspiciously, he was trying to hide scratches on his arms. It didn't take long for authorities to zero in on Chris as their prime suspect. He was brought in for questioning, where he insisted that his wife and kids were alive when he left for the gym. But forensic evidence told a different story. Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin had already been dead by 5:30 a.m., the exact time Chris claimed he had left the house.
Listen, man, she wasn't alive when you left.
She was alive. She was laying right beside me.
Listen to me. We can go back and forth with this all day long, but the physical evidence doesn't lie, man. She was not alive when you left this morning. The children weren't alive.
Then detectives learned about his affair with Tara, giving him a clear motive. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's house showed that no one else had entered the home after Chris left.
How long have you been in a relationship with Chris?
Since late November, early December.
Where all you guys been together?
Phoenix and Hawaii, Maui.
What would he tell his wife when he was gone?
He would have just told it that he was working.
Investigators kept digging, and the evidence against Chris just kept piling up. His credit card statements showed he had purchased the exact same brand and color of spray paint used to write the messages on the walls. And the most damning piece, those threatening emails, they were traced back to an account Chris had created 6 months before the murders. Had he been planning this all along? With the evidence stacked against him, Chris Coleman was arrested and charged with murder. Chris's high-profile trial began in April 2011, and everyone in the country was watching. It had everything: sex, religion, a scandalous affair, and ties to a wealthy preacher. The media ate it up. Chris admitted to cheating on Sherry, but stuck to his not guilty plea. He even showed up to court wearing a bulletproof vest for his own protection. Prosecutors laid out a chilling timeline. Experts testified that Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin had been murdered sometime between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. As if that wasn't damning enough, forensic analysts revealed that the crude messages spray-painted around the house matched Chris's own handwriting. The courtroom was tense as family members broke down in tears, forced to look at heartbreaking images of the boys, still in their beds, lifeless. The prosecution argued that Chris had been desperate. He wanted to keep both his six-figure job and his mistress. And to drive the point home, they showed the jury explicit texts, racy photos, and even a SX tape of Chris and Tara. Then Tara herself took the stand, revealing that Chris had promised her he'd serve divorce papers to Sherry on the same day his family was found murdered. The prosecution didn't hold back, stating, "He felt his own children die in his own hands. He's not like us. He doesn't value life the way we do." And on May 5th, 2011, exactly 2 years to the day after Sherry, Garrett, and Gavin were killed, the jury made their decision. Chris was found guilty on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. His sentence? Life in prison without parole. But the nightmare wasn't over for Sherry's family. Chris tried to appeal his conviction, dragging them through even more pain. However, in 2014, his conviction was upheld. While Chris had done the dirty work himself, the killer in this next case thought hiring someone else would keep his hands clean. Turns out, he was dead wrong.
What did the robber look like?
He looked like her dad.
About the size of him. Was he a big guy or was he a little guy?
The size of my dad.
Just after midnight on September 29th, 2015, former hockey player and businessman Thomas Clayton made a frantic 911 call.
911.
Help me, my wife. She's dead. Hurry.
Okay, just stay on the line with me. How long has she been down?
I don't know. I just got home.
Sir, you need to calm down so I can help you. What's your name?
My name's Tom.
She beyond CPR?
Yes.
Sir, can you tell me why you think she's beyond CPR?
That's not me.
Tom told the dispatcher that he had been at a weekly poker game with friends, but when he got home, he walked into a nightmare. His wife lying in a red puddle, brutally beaten. Their 2 young children were inside the house at the time. Thankfully, they were upstairs and physically unharmed, but terrified. When the first officer arrived, Tom was on his knees, struggling to get words out. He hadn't attempted CPR, and by the time paramedics arrived, it was clear Kelly was already gone. The scene was horrifying. Red spattered throughout the house, telling the story of a vicious struggle. Investigators followed the trail of destruction. It looked like the attack started in the upstairs bedroom, where Kelly had likely been asleep. Frames were knocked to the floor, broken items were scattered around, and a section of the wall near the staircase was dented, almost as if someone had been thrown into it.
Tom, where were you when this all went down?
Playing poker with my buddy. I came home and my daughter said there was a robber in the house and she saw.
But as officers took in the crime scene, things weren't adding up. For one, there were 0 signs of forced entry. The only door left open was the side entrance to the garage, but it wasn't damaged, making it very unlikely that a stranger had broken in. Then there was the money. Tom was a regular gambler, so he kept large amounts of cash in the house, but nothing had been touched. If this was a robbery, why didn't the intruder take anything? At first glance, investigators suspected a domestic dispute turned deadly, but Tom had no injuries, no scratches, no blood on him. But police felt there was something more to Tom's story, so they brought him in for questioning. They also wanted to talk to one more crucial witness, Tom's 7-year-old daughter, Charlie. Charlie and her 3-year-old brother, Cullen, had both been in the house when their mother was attacked. While Cullen was likely unaware of what had happened, Charlie had seen everything. Through tears, the little girl told investigators that she woke up to her mother screaming, "Run, Charlie, run!" But instead of running out of the house, Charlie ran to protect her little brother. Later, she said she went to her mother and hugged her leg, and that's when she saw the attacker.
He was wearing jeans, a black long sleeve shirt, and a mask.
Okay. What did the robber look like?
He looked like my dad.
And why do you say that? How did he look like your dad?
The mask and his jeans.
How about the size of him? Was he a big guy or was he a little guy?
The size of my dad.
Did the robber say anything?
He probably didn't say anything because what if it was my dad? He could recognize his voice.
Charlie's statement only reinforced what investigators had suspected all along. Tom Clayton was responsible for his wife's murder. They considered the 7-year-old's account enough to confirm their suspicions. After several hours of questioning, they arrested Tom for second-degree murder, but the case was far from over. There were still a lot of missing pieces. Most importantly, why would Tom want his wife dead? To everyone who knew them, Tom and Kelly seemed like the picture-perfect couple. They had been together for a decade, had 2 kids, and Kelly regularly talked about how lucky she felt to have married Tom. But cracks in that image started to form when investigators spoke to Kelly's 16-year-old niece. She had spent the summer working for Tom at ServPro, and during that time, he opened up about his marriage. According to her, Tom bluntly admitted that he wasn't in love with Kelly anymore. He bragged about having multiple affairs, and he made one chilling comment. He couldn't divorce Kelly because if he did, he'd lose everything. Then, investigators discovered that Tom had doubled Kelly's life insurance payout in the months leading up to her murder, raising it to $1 million. As police kept digging, more women came forward, saying they had been romantically involved with Tom. Police were convinced that Tom was the killer, but there was just one problem. His alibi was airtight. Kelly's time of death was determined to be while Tom was at his weekly poker game. Every single person there confirmed he never left, and his timeline checked out with phone records and surveillance. So if Tom wasn't physically there when Kelly was killed, who was? That's when police got another tip from Kelly's niece. She told them about one man, Michael Beard. Michael had worked for Tom at ServPro. Before that, he had worked for Tom at another business. But Michael had recently lost his job after being accused of stealing from clients' homes and drinking on the job. Interestingly, it turned out that Tom was also his landlord. Michael was brought in for questioning. At first, he denied any hard feelings toward Tom, but as detectives pressed him, he finally cracked. Michael admitted that Tom had offered him $10,000 to kill Kelly and burn down their house for the insurance payout. Investigators believed that Tom was desperate to get out of his marriage, and rather than divorce Kelly and lose everything, he hired someone to take care of the problem for him. Then, another former ServPro employee, Larry Johnson, came forward with even more damning information. He told investigators that, on the night of September 24th, he had driven with Michael near the Claytons' home in Tom's car. Michael got out of the vehicle for about 30 minutes before returning, but the real plan was finally put into motion on September 28th, 2015. That evening, Tom swapped cars with his co-worker, Luke Tetreault, driving Luke's truck to ServPro and taking back a work vehicle instead. Later that night, while Tom was at his friend's poker game, he made a call to Michael. After that call, Michael went to ServPro, picked up Luke's truck, and drove straight to the Clayton home. He got inside through the garage, using a key that Tom had given him earlier. Once inside, Michael brutally bludgeoned Kelly to death before fleeing the scene and heading home. Michael's DNA was found at the crime scene and on the murder weapon. Michael went to trial in October 2016, and within 2 weeks, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without parole. Then, in January 2017, it was Tom's turn to face justice. His trial lasted nearly 7 weeks. Unlike Michael's case, where physical evidence directly tied him to the crime, Tom's guilt had to be proven almost entirely through circumstantial evidence. By late February 2017, the verdict was in. Tom Clayton was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in prison without parole.
Once the judge gave Michael Beard that at the time of his sentencing, I expected nothing less, because this guy, as the attorneys for Beard said, this guy was the mastermind. He was the true predator in the case.
But what do you think about these cases? Which one shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you thought this was wild, just wait until you see what's coming next. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss an update.